This episode is The Courage to be Disliked, Part 2. There were so many tips that I wanted to bring up. I thought, let's do 2 episodes because this is such a big challenge for people. And we have, well, if you think about the stats, I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last episode, but 49% of all adults identify as people pleasers. So if that describes you at all, you're not alone. That's a lot of people that want to please others. And I will never forget something a coach told me many years ago, which was when I was asking for him, to give me more language for something or a potential conflict that I was in or a difficult, I perceived it as a difficult conversation. Doesn't mean that it had to be, but that is what came to mind for me. So I remember thinking, I want more language. I want more language. And he said something that stopped me in my tracks. He said, Karen, you don't need more language. You need more reps disappointing people. And I'll tell you, that just hit me like a ton of bricks because it was so true. And this is something that I continue to work on because, like you, I get triggered at certain times and then old operating systems from my past kick in. And it's very challenging sometimes, depending also on the magnitude of a situation and the relationship that you have with the person and the outcome that you're looking for. So there's so many dynamics at play. And I wanted to bring that up because it is so important to remember that, first of all, have grace for yourself as you continue to process through things. And I am working on doing the same thing for myself. So last week I gave you 5 tips. So I've got 5 more tips this time as well. And I like to have immediately applicable, very, very actionable things. So the first tip is to pause before saying yes. Most of the time, it's our knee-jerk reaction to say yes, or we feel this pressure that we have to respond immediately. And this also goes with email. So many times people will say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I didn't respond, or some apology when it was only half a day ago or a few hours ago, whatever it might look like. So I digress, but just remember, you don't have to be immediately available to people all the time or answer right away. So what I would suggest is that when someone asks you for something, stop filling the silence. Try one of these 3 phrases. Let me check my calendar. That's a great way to give some time and breath to something. The second one is, I'd like to think about that. And then the third one is, I'll get back to you tomorrow, or I'll get back to you next week, some date that you offer somebody. And I would say that most people pleasing happens because we answer too quickly. Again, going back to our knee-jerk reaction. I grew up where I thought my job was to make everybody else happy. And that is not even possible, but it's interesting what you pick up on based on what was modeled to you. And boy, I think about how much my mom said yes. I mean, she was such a giver and she did enjoy it, but I know that there were times when she said yes when she probably didn't want to. And I can remember just she volunteered and loved volunteering. But then there were certain times where I know this is probably a time where she should have delegated to someone else. And that is something I need to continue to learn and be careful around the patterns. So this is also something I'd recommend for you. What patterns exist based on your upbringing that are still there and you're not even aware of them? So that's why even in this example of pausing before saying yes, take a beat and even in that moment, think before you say anything, just start noticing, okay, I would normally have said yes here. I'm celebrating that I'm asking them to, or I'm telling them I'm going to hold off and get back to them. Number 2, stop explaining your decisions. Oh my gosh, I see this so often. I remember, so here's my favorite, very straightforward way. Depends on the context, of course, in the relationship, but the simple words, I'll pass. That could be enough. I recently had somebody pitch me from a group that I'm in, and I was really surprised that she was pitching me. I think she really meant well. but it came across because I really didn't even know her that well. I met her once, and then all of a sudden she was telling me that this is what she does for a living and that, we should set up a call. And I will tell you, it made me a little bit anxious to imagine just writing back, I'll pass, and not justifying, I have other people that support me in this. I'm blah, 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 all of the justifications. But I didn't. I said, thank you so much for the offer. I'll pass. Woo! That was a muscle that I continue to build. So I want to remind you, I'll pass is a perfectly acceptable answer. I remember even shopping at TJ Maxx when or anywhere for that matter, where somebody has to help you with something. So let's say I think about the jewelry counter where they have to get a key, open up the thing, pull out the thing. I used to feel guilty if I didn't buy something. And then I had to remind myself, this is their job. All I have to say is, thank you so much. I'll pass. And that has worked wonders for me. Let me give you another one. So related to stop explaining your decisions, instead of, for example, I'm so sorry, I can't because I'm really busy this week and I already have this going on and that going on, simply say this: I'm not able to make that work. Very simple. The other thing that I have learned, often the hard way, is the more you explain, the more you invite negotiation. This happened to me not that long ago, actually, where I technically didn't have another call, but I just said I needed to go at the top of the hour when I thought I had another call initially, and then I realized I didn't, but I had a pending deadline. So I still needed to go. But then when the top of the hour came, we were still in the middle of a conversation that was still very important. And she said, oh, I thought you needed to go. And I said, well, I can go a little bit longer. And then I said, well, and then I started, instead of just saying, I'm good for 10 more minutes, I went into more of an explanation of, you know what, it's really just something I have to get done. I've got a deadline, that weakens your authority, your certainty, and absolutely, like I said before, it opens up an invitation to negotiation. So be mindful of that. Number 3 is to replace approval seeking with clarity. And what I mean by this is, before you speak, ask yourself this: am I trying to be understood, or am I trying to be liked? Choose clarity every time. This is something to keep in mind. What is the motivation behind when you're speaking? So just remember that. Be careful that you're not trying to get approval. You're simply wanting clarity, wanting to understand. Number 4 is let awkward silence do its job. After you make a request, so this as an example, this could be you're setting a boundary, you're sharing your opinion. Don't rescue the moment. This happens a lot, especially in negotiations where we think, oh, you're not saying anything, I have to jump in. Say your piece, pause, and then let the other person respond, because silence often feels uncomfortable because we're trying to manage the other person's reaction, and we can't manage their reaction. The only person we can control is ourselves. So think, what might be a time? So for example, I'll tell you, I think I already told you this story once, but just as a reminder, when I first started coaching, I had set an expectation with my friend group that I would review their resumes, and that was for free, just as friends. So when I left corporate to start my coaching business again, at the time, this was a long time ago in 2003, one of my friends had asked if I could do a resume. And I was so nervous. I actually was talking to my therapist about how do I respond to her. And it's so funny how we grow over time. And I think now this is no big deal, but it was very hard in the beginning. So I also want to remind you, if you're working on any new habit, that it takes time and practice to start getting more of that muscle memory in your body and your brain as you go through these things. So I said to her, I would love to do that for you. This is my hourly rate. And I just let that, like, does that work for you? I think I said, and it didn't. I didn't expect that she would say yes, But the pause was critical because it also shows people she's serious. When we hedge and try to jump in and explain, it's all very similar to what I said a little bit ago about stop explaining your decisions. It's kind of the same deal. So be mindful that you want to be the one that's more comfortable with silence, because when you can be more comfortable with silence, you can stay grounded in who you are. And even that pause can help you take a breath and give you a moment. So that's where I would be. Just let it be. Easier said than done, but let it be. And I'm guessing you're going to see some great results from that. And when you say what you're going to say, you're no with confidence, for example, or you're making a request, but you say it with confidence, then it is so much easier to have those conversations because you're clear. And when you're clear, you're a defined person, which comes across as very confident. I've learned a lot about self-definition through Dr. John Townsend, who is a wonderful mentor, and he's written a lot of different books. Really great Christian author and a business consultant. And that is one of the things that I've learned from him. And then number 5 is expect disappointment. Expect disappointment. So instead of thinking, I hope they're okay with this, try, you know what? They may not like this, and that's okay. Disappointment isn't the same as disrespect. And if you are walking around the world trying to please everybody, first of all, you're never going to be able to do that. And this is where we can spend a lot of energy that takes away from the things that we want to be doing, the productivity that we could be having. So just keep in mind, and one thing I would even say, it might be a good exercise. I'm just thinking about this right now in the moment, that when you just write out, what would it say about you if someone is disappointed in you? And that can be helpful just to get more clarity. That would be a good journaling prompt. So if somebody is disappointed with me, what does that say about me? So those are a couple of thoughts. So let's walk through the 5 again. Number 1, pause before saying yes. 2, stop explaining your decisions. 3, replace approval seeking with clarity. 4, let awkward silence do its job. And 5, expect disappointment. This also brings me back to one of my favorite authors and humans, Allison Fergale, who wrote the book Likeable Badass. And she talks about this exercise of collecting no's. She's also a professor. And I love this exercise. Just like when I was 18, I sold Mary Kay Cosmetics, and we were taught that you have to expect 50 no's before you get 1 yes. And that is some volume there, I'll tell you. And it is important to remember that there are going to be times where it's just reps, getting used to, like that coach said to me, getting used to disappointing people, and then being able to not just live with yourself, but be able to move forward and move on in confidence, being grounded in who you are and the decisions that you make. And as one of my dear friends, Lori Keel, has said in the past, this makes me think of this as, nobody is going to care as much about your life or your career as you do. I mean, that may be obvious, but a lot of times we're hoping and waiting that somebody else, like somebody's approval or, just people liking us, is going to say something more or better about us, when at the end of the day, we need to live a life that we are happy with and that we feel good about. So I would say go live your life as much as you can with confidence and peace in knowing you are making the best decisions for yourself, regardless of whether you're disappointing someone or they may not like you. But I will say, having that courage, and you have it within you. It's a matter of activating it. And that's what I continue to work on as well in all of these things. So I hope this has been helpful for you. And what I would remind you of is, if you know anybody that is looking for someone to come help their team communicate with more confidence, especially in high stakes situations, I would love to be introduced. And as always, as well, I will continue to ask If you liked this episode or this podcast has been helpful to you in any way, please review it on Amazon or Spotify or whatever platform you listen to it, because it is incredibly helpful for other people to see and hear the episode, as well as it is helpful to me. So I'm grateful for you. And thanks again for listening. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.